If you want to understand how the guitar works in just a few minutes, then this is the video for you. We are going to go through 3 different fundamental concepts of how the guitar works and help you make sense of the guitar and support you on your journey as a guitar player. And in the end, I will also share a couple of things that are easy to neglect when starting out but have tremendous value when trying to get good at the guitar. So let's begin. When first approaching the guitar, it can feel quite daunting. You see all the strings, all the notes, and it feels almost impossible to wrap your head around it. It's like trying to read a map with all the roads missing. The map of the fretboard is encrypted, and we need to decrypt it. But fear not, it's actually not as hard as it seems. We just need to start applying a few tools and frameworks so we can begin to see the patterns that are hidden in plain sight as we move from point A to point B on the fretboard. So what are these hidden paths and how do we begin to see them? The 2 frameworks that we are going to work with are concepts and tools. Concepts tells us what we want to understand and tools helps us learn it. And that brings us to the first concept, layout. We need to understand the structure of how the guitar is laid out. It's like understanding what kind of terrain the map that we are trying to read is in. To help us understand this, we are going to use a tool called reference. We will reference the guitar against a piano, because it will visually help us see the layout, the structure more clearly. A full-size piano has 88 notes, and every 12th note interval, the notes repeat in another octave. But on a guitar with 24 frets there are 144 notes. How is that possible? Each of the 6 strings on a guitar represents 2 octaves, like this. But as you can see, these strings overlap, which means you can find the same note in the same octave in multiple places. That's why the guitar has more note positions. Take the note A3, for example. It can be found here, 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 and here. It's the same note in the same octave. On a piano, the notes are laid out in a zigzag pattern, like this. Whereas on the guitar, the notes are laid out one after another in a straight line. This will actually become a benefit as we continue decrypting the fretboard even more. It might seem complicated at first, but it's really just a natural shape that comes from the tuning of the strings and how they overlap. The map on the guitar fretboard simply works a little bit different than on the map on the piano. Remember, you can always pause, rewatch the parts of the video that you need to. Now that we understand the layout of the guitar, what kind of terrain our fretboard map is in, we can start looking for landmarks. That leads us to the next concept, chords. We can try to memorize every chord individually. Like this is A, this is a D, this is a G, and so on. But the guitar has a lot of chords and a lot of frets. So what would be much more helpful is a system. Something that ties them together and helps us predict where different chords are located. And that brings us to our next tool, shapes. When you play a triad on the piano, let's say a C major, you use a finger shape like this. If we move that same shape up the keyboard, we get these chords. And then we are back at C major again. Notice something important here. Using the same shape on the piano gave us different kind of chords. We got major chords, minor chords, and a diminished chord. That means on the piano, to play only major chords, we have to constantly change finger shapes. But remember when I mentioned earlier that the guitar has a benefit because the notes are laid out in a straight line? This means that the guitar doesn't have just chord shapes. It has specific chord shapes for each chord type. For example, this E major shape. This shape will always be a major chord. If we continue, we get easy, right? This applies to all other chord types as well. Minor chords, suspended chords, diminished chord, you name it. If you have a shape, if you move it up the fretboard, it will always be the same kind of chord. There are 5 basic chord shapes that form the foundation of most chords. The C shape, the A shape, the G shape, the E shape, and D shape. Together, these make up what's known as the caged system. There's a lot more to explain about this, so we'll save that for another video. Now that we know how to find landmarks on the fretboard, it's time to understand how to navigate between them. And that brings us to the next concept, scales. On a piano, you can only move in 2 directions when playing scales. To the right, you go up, and to the left, you go down. On a guitar, you can do that too, but you can also move vertically up and down. It's like having 6 pianos stacked on top of each other, slightly offset. You can play scales on one piano or switch in between them. Scales allow us to make melodies, move in between chords, and so on. For example, if we want to move between some chords, we can do it like this. And we can do that in both directions, horizontally or vertically. It gives us freedom to choose, so we can land in different places. We have now decoded the guitar fretboard. We have learned the layout of the guitar, that is like the terrain of the map. We know the chords as landmarks that we can find all over the place, and scales is like paths that let us move around and between the chords. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. And now over to the last part, the things that we easily neglect when starting out. It might sound simple, but hey, it's really gonna help. Even 1 or 2 strings will drastically help with knowing where you are, where the root of the next chord you are going to take is, and so on. It's just gonna help a lot. Music theory is the foundation of the chords, the scales, and how everything is stitched together. You can play music without knowing the theory, but it will drastically help you to understand the whole picture, the bigger picture, if you know the theory.